What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the Hands-On channel. I'm grinning because you just can't make this stuff up, man. I mean, just unbelievable. When I saw this headline earlier today, I had to share this with you guys. So we're only going to cover one story here today, but we're going to cover it in pretty good depth because I want you guys to get the full picture of what I think is going on here. So remember about a week ago when all of the mainstream media were going batshit crazy and saying that, oh, we got a white supremacist that's attacked the Capitol and he had a Nazi flag, and the Capitol Police, they displayed it out in front of the U-Haul so the media could get convenient pictures of that, right? Remember all that? We covered that story in one of the videos we did. I think the video before last, we covered that story, and I thought it was a pretty big deal because they're trying to basically paint all of these people that are not white as white supremacists, so that's telling me that they're really reaching for straws to try to find some white supremacy to back up what Biden has been saying all along, that white supremacy is the number one thing that's wrong, the number one threat that's facing the nation, right? So in case you missed it last week or whatever, we'll read through this real quick. Last Monday night, 1 week ago, a young migrant from Chesterfield, Missouri, drove a U-Haul truck and attempted to ram his way through a White House barrier. His plot failed, and police arrested the young man in shorts. Police investigators then pulled out an apparent Nazi flag from a U-Haul truck after the crash near the White House and laid it out on the street for photographers. It was a white supremacist attack. Remember that? So we're all up to speed now, right? My mind was blown when I saw this headline. I was just like, oh my God, the emperor has no clothes. They have gone off the rails completely. Major charges dropped against Kandula, the East Asian migrant terrorist with Nazi flag who tried to ram White House and take over the country. So all major charges were dropped, I guess this weekend sometime. And when no one was looking, when everyone's out at the lake and visiting family and having barbecues and having good times and stuff like this, this is oftentimes when they drop a lot of these, these bombshell stories, and then they bury them, and hardly anyone is talking about this. I went to the Drudge Report. I went to several different MSM news sites, Yahoo and Google and all these other places that talk about news like this, that they were the ones that were, on fire about it last Monday night whenever this guy was supposedly a white supremacist. But later on, when they found out, when they showed the guy's driver's license and it turns out he's actually an Asian person, then that story didn't really stick. It didn't have a lot of, it didn't have any of the George Floyd effect that they were looking for. See, they're trying to turn the Democrat voters against the Republican people, saying, oh, all Republicans are white supremacists and all this, MAGA, ultra MAGA, all the things that Biden has been saying all along. So they have painted all these people as white supremacists, but they can't even find any to frame. So they framed this Asian guy, and apparently it didn't stick, or they realized that the media didn't pick up on the story and do what they wanted. It didn't have the political outcome that they were looking for. So now they're letting this guy go. So let's get into this story. As Kristen Taylor reported, eyewitnesses say the truck was driven twice into a barrier, so it wasn't an accident, before stopping. The incident took place at north side of Lafayette Park at 16th and H Street Northwest. Police laid out the flag on the sidewalk near the truck, apparently for the media to film, before folding it up and taking it away. Internet users, including me, were immediately suspect. The only thing they found in the truck was a Nazi flag. This was too convenient for Joe Biden and the FBI's narrative of the dreaded white supremacist threat in America. Also they always say climate change is basically white supremacy and then climate change. Those are the things that all of us need to be just going to sleep at night, terrified to death and, crying ourselves to sleep at night and having all this white guilt and stuff. Even if you don't think you're a white supremacist, according to these people, you are. So anyway, local Fox 5 on Tuesday identified the driver on Tuesday morning. A 19-year-old man from Chesterfield, Missouri, named Varsith Kandula. I mean, I've never heard of any white supremacist in history with a name like Varsith Kandula, but maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there are some out there. I'm sure there are some, anomalies out there and people that hate their own race, as we discussed in that last video. But this is just a bit too far. You know, they've crossed the Rubicon with their idiocy, and they expect us to follow them and trust them. And, you know, after all the stuff I saw with COVID, mini rant here, I can never trust the media again. I'm sorry, but they lost all credibility. All of them lost all credibility with the way they were supporting the COVID narrative and the COVID tyranny. So let's move on. U.S. Park Police say Cy Varsith Kandula of Chesterfield, Missouri, was taken into custody at the scene. Kandula faces multiple charges, including assault with a dangerous weapon. I mean, hell yeah, a U-Haul truck? You could probably screw some stuff up with that pretty bad. Reckless operation of a motor vehicle, the threat to kill, kidnap, or inflict bodily harm on president, vice president, or family. Destruction of federal property and trespassing. Officials released his name Tuesday. No one was injured in the crash. Cy Kandula graduated from Marquette High School in West St. Louis and has a limited internet profile. So I don't know if they didn't have enough time to gin up a whole bunch of white supremacy contacts that they could point to for this guy, or what the deal was, but from the beginning, even in that last video, I said, hey guys, if you're going to try to pull off a false flag on us, you probably ought to put a little more effort into it than finding the first guy you can find and just placing a Nazi flag in the cab of the truck with him, or however that went down. This is Cy Varsith Kandula, the Missouri man who drove a U-Haul truck into the White House gates. And in this picture, they show his image. I'll try, if I can find it, I'll put it right here. I mean, obviously, clearly the guy's not a white guy. It'd be pretty damn unusual for this person to be a white supremacist. Oh, and get this, Cy is not even a U.S. citizen. Government prosecutors asked Judge Merriweather to order Kandula held because of the crime he is accused of is one of violence and because he is a flight risk. So, I mean, yeah, obviously you're trying to overthrow the government. You're trying to take out Kamala and Biden and their family and all this other stuff. Yeah, you should probably be held, right? The government told the court Kandula is not a U.S. citizen, but did not specify where he's from. So I find that interesting. On Friday, the D.C. prosecutors dropped all serious charges against Cy Kandula, who said he was attempting to overthrow the White House. So this guy admitted he was attempting to overthrow the White House. Now, let's compare and contrast for just a moment. There are January 6 defendants locked up, at least to my understanding, that have never had formal charges pressed against them or filed against them. And so that's a violation of their due process. They're a violation of a speedy trial, the right to a speedy trial. Remember all that stuff? We're supposed to have that here under the Bill of Rights. But yet these J6ers are having their rights violated on a daily basis. And, you know, I just saw the thing last week, another little mini rant here, but, you know, Stuart Rhodes, the head honcho of Oath Keepers. I mean, they threw the book at that guy and for seditious conspiracy, I believe was the charge that they came up with. And he, from what I know about the situation, and I'll admit, I don't have firsthand knowledge, but everything that I've read about the situation, he did nothing wrong. He went there to basically protest the election results of 2020, and a lot of other people did. You know, some say into the millions of people showed up that day to talk about, hey, we got to sort this out. And, you know, if you remember, during that day, Congress was supposed to be deliberating on whether or not they were going to accept the electoral votes or not. And before the riot, many of the people, especially on the Republican sides, were saying, hey, no, we're going to look into this more. We're going to have an investigation to figure out if everything's legitimate before we certify this election. After the, you know, riot of what they call the insurrection of J6, all those same Republicans, many of them, if not the vast majority of them, were like, no, now we're not going to question the election anymore. So the actions that were taken that day definitely had a powerful effect on your congressmen and your senators up there at the Capitol, and kept them from going ahead and doing what they planned on doing earlier that day. Their whole mind was changed because they were like, oh, well, I can't get behind anything that has to do with these violent extremists, this insurrection, blah, blah, blah. AOC, Chuck Schumer, a lot of them said worse than January 6th, or January 6th was worse than Pearl Harbor and worse than 9/11, on and on and on. You guys remember. But they locked that guy Stuart Rhodes up for what I can tell, doing little to nothing. I mean, He didn't have any firearms. He wasn't telling people to go in. I mean, you could look at videos of what Ray Epps did that day, and you might scratch your head and wonder, why is Ray Epps still a free man? My thoughts are, is he's part of the CIA or the FBI, or he has been sheep dipped. So moving back into this story, but yeah, they gave that guy, real quick, if you don't know, Rhodes, they gave him 18 years. I mean, hard time, probably in a federal penitentiary. It's not going to be good. So that is an example of how someone that actually didn't commit any crimes is getting 18 years in prison because he's a white guy, because he was part of Oath Keepers, because he was supporting MAGA. That's why. We have a political double standard that's been implemented here in this country, and many of us aren't even aware of it, because a lot of these stories like this, they get brushed under the rug. You know, they come out real big and you know, a lot of hoorah and a lot of, you know, a lot of press whenever it first comes out about the white supremacist tie, right? And then when they say they're releasing this guy, hardly anyone will hear about it. So I wanted to make sure you guys were in the know on what's going on here. And again, this is a great thing to point to as far as the double standard justice system goes. If you're trying to prove this to some liberal that's arguing, oh no, it's always been this way. Oh no, it's the same for everyone. No, 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 no. Justice is no longer blind. It has favoritism. And if you're an Asian who's trying to overthrow the United States of America, as long as you're from another country, not a United States national, but a foreign national, then I guess you can get away with it. But if you're an actual citizen of the United States who is protected by the Bill of Rights and having those rights violated and having no right to peacefully protest and stuff like this, I mean, you know, it just opens up a whole can of worms. Why in the hell would they do something like this? Something extraordinary happened. Prosecutors dropped every single charge, leaving Kandula with nothing but a single count of depredation of property of the United States in excess of $1,000, the Post notes. So they're going to get him for like property damage, but nothing else. Probably just have a fine, no jail time, anything like that. Even though the guy said, according to this, he said his intention was to take over and overthrow the United States government. I don't want to sound paranoid, this person says, but that seems like they're trying to hush this up. Mark Hemingway, the husband of conservative commentator Molly Hemingway, tweeted, "So why does this foreigner with Nazi flag get a pass for ramming the entrance of the White House?" Is, you know, one of the things my wife and I were just talking about, was this guy a CIA informant, or had he been sheep dipped for some other operation and for whatever reason it failed miserably? So the first thing I'm reminded of is, if you guys remember back, you'd have to be a little older to remember this, but mid-90s, the Oklahoma City bombing with Timothy McVeigh, they took ammonium nitrate and some other stuff and made an explosive, put it in the back of a U-Haul truck, and blew up the Murrah building, I think it was called, in Oklahoma City. Killed a bunch of people, killed a bunch of kids, but there was a lot of weird stuff that was tied to that. Like that morning, I believe it was the ATF had all been called and told to stay home that day. Maybe that's just a coincidence. I don't know how often they called them and told them to stay home for the day, but that seems pretty convenient. So, I mean, there were a lot of weird things about that. And when I look back at that in hindsight, I'm like, well, obviously the Clinton administration was trying to go after guns, and they were trying to make, even way back then, they were trying to make this white supremacy divide. They were trying to, you know, point to this guy, ex-military guy, Tim McVeigh, evil guy, blew up this building, killed a bunch of kids. We got to ban guns. That's what their end goal was. They were trying to go after the Second Amendment. And this stuff is all very reminiscent of that, and the way they're dividing the country up. And so the reason I brought up Timothy McVeigh and the Oklahoma City bombing is because I don't know if you guys saw it or not, but like something like 30 tons. No. It was like, I don't remember how much it was. It was like 60,000 pounds of ammonium nitrate disappeared from a train that was en route from Wyoming to California. Somehow or another, they said the seal wasn't broken on this train car or anything. Somehow they say it just leaked out of the bottom, right? It just leaked on the way. And maybe it did. Or maybe, just maybe, the FBI, the CIA, all these other alphabet agencies are planning something big. And maybe that U-Haul truck was some sort of a dry run so that they could see how far they could get with, using very low technology, and like the U-Haul truck, instead of using like a, explosive to blow up the barrier, they wanted to see, I guess, if they could ram a U-Haul truck through it. And they sent this guy, Kandula. I don't know. I'm not sure. I'm just speculating here, but it does make me very suspicious when suddenly they're using the same sort of a device that was used, or the same sort of vehicle that was used in Oklahoma City is now showing up ramming the barrier at the Capitol. No, it was at the White House. At the White House gates. Could it be a dry run? What happened to that 60,000 pounds of ammonium nitrate that supposedly disappeared? That could be used. I mean, I think most normally it's used for fertilizer for farms and stuff like that, but it could be used like they used it in Oklahoma City to create a improvised explosive device to do all sorts of damage and frame all sorts of people. I don't know, but it smells like it was a dry run. This smells like a CIA, FBI operation. So guys, I would like to know what you guys are thinking about this. Have you heard this story? Do you think other news outlets will dare cover this story and talk about the, double standard that's apparent right now? I mean, if you have eyes to see and ears to hear, you can see there's clearly a double standard. And it's not in favor of white privilege as they would have you believe. In fact, if you're white or even could be labeled as white, even if you've got Native American in you like I do or other mixed races, if you look white enough and they can nail you for something that's going to cast a shadow of white supremacy throughout the nation and bring fear into people's minds and hearts and into their home, then that's what they're going to do. I think that's what this is. This was a test run, a dry run. This guy had been sheep dipped by either the FBI or the CIA or some other shadowy, clandestine organization that does not have the best interest of the United States people in mind or at heart. That is the problem. I've heard several different people and several different takes on this, but a little while back, people were saying we should abolish the FBI or defund the FBI. And I support that. And the reason why is because the FBI, time after time after time, all throughout its history, has been linked to all sorts of clandestine, corrupt operations that were not politically unbiased. They were clearly biased to one side. The left owns the FBI. That's why when Trump was president, the FBI was working against him. The CIA was probably working against him as well. And when the Democrats are in charge, they cover everything up for the Democrats. The FBI literally is holding back evidence that could tie the Biden crime family directly to the Chinese. And they're holding it back. Why are they doing that? Why are they holding back evidence when they'll go down to Mar-a-Lago and turn Trump's whole life upside down and make a big spectacle out of it and say that he's a traitor and, all this other stuff that they've said about Trump, right? Biden gets none of those accusations thrown against him because he's one of theirs. It really is a double standard of lack of justice system here in the United States of America, and none of us should put up with it. Justice is supposed to be blind. It's supposed to be equal justice and equal protection under the law. We don't have that anymore. So anyway, let me know what you guys think about this. Am I right? Was this a CIA operation or FBI operation to basically make white supremacy the number one talking point going into the 2024 election cycle? I think that's what this is, because Biden has doubled down time and time and time again saying white supremacy is the number one threat. I don't think so. I think it's communism. I think the number one threat the United States faces right now is a internal communist overthrow from inside our own house. And in my opinion, it's time we clean house and we get the commies out of government. And that includes the deep state and all of these other bureaucracies that have basically stained our liberty, stained our country, the great country, the United States of America. So let's get it back, guys. Let's make America great again. And I mean, for real. For real. So anyway, appreciate you tuning in. Let me know what you think. As always, I stand for liberty. I hope you do too.